What is going on, guys? Welcome back. It's been so long. Me and Jimmy had to reminisce for a little bit. I had some medical issues I had to go through, and people probably thought we were gone, but we're not, Jimmy. And as a matter of fact, we're back on an amazing day in MMA history because until now, Jimmy Smith was the biggest name to go from Bellator to the UFC. But Michael Chandler, Jimmy, he didn't want you to have that honor. So he had to make the switch. It hurts your pride a little bit?
I can live with it, man. I hope he has a longer run than I did. That's all I'm going to say, man.
Well, I don't know that he will, but it is interesting that he comes in and signs a agreement to be the backup for this championship fight. And I guess I'm confused a little bit by it because we normally don't see this. We normally see somebody in the division get these opportunities. And I like Michael Chandler. I believe firmly that Michael Chandler can go in and compete. I'd love to see him fight somebody in the top 8, but it's so interesting when you look at Gaethje as an example. We really talked about this in past shows, which seem like they've been years ago now. He really had to fight his way into contention. So to say that Michael Chandler is going to come over from Bellator, and I don't want to say have that handed to him because let's be honest, he just beat Benson Henderson. He has had a very solid, if not the most solid, Bellator career. He comes in an accomplished fighter, but it just seems a little bit too much to have everything just there on a silver platter if somebody falls out of this fight.
Number one, I don't buy it. I don't. What I think is going to happen is they're going to book him versus Tony Ferguson. Simply because you don't have a guy come in, as you said, and be the backup for a title fight. Because it's. Do you remember? This is going kind of way back. When Bret the Hitman Hart went over to WCW. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. The worst
and they
management
ever. And they made him a referee for his first fight or something. Like, what? Like for his first match? And it was like, what are you doing? Like, the idea of making him a backup for a title fight, you're saying he's good without giving him a fight. You don't put somebody in that position unless, you're behind them, unless you think they can A, win it, and B, make a good champion, all these things. But you're not giving him a fight to introduce him to the UFC fans. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So what I think is most likely going to happen is, if you don't understand the way it works promotionally, is you can't sign a bout agreement if you're not under contract with the promotion. So he's under contract with the promotion. Now they can send Tony Ferguson a bout agreement and maybe get that fight going. I think that's what they're going to do. So there's going to be a delay between he signs for the UFC with the UFC and then he signs to fight Tony Ferguson. So I think we're in that delay period right now. It just doesn't make sense to sign somebody and use them as a backup, especially when he leapfrogs all that other talent. It makes much more sense to put in a branded UFC guy in that slot. And so I think he's going to have to fight Ferguson, which I think is great for Michael Chandler. Isn't so great for Dustin Poirier. Isn't great for the bunch of the rest of the guys in the 155-pound division. What I'm curious about is how they're going to basically push Michael Chandler, how they're going to explain his presence, how they're going to translate this to a UFC audience who might not know who he is without mentioning the word Bellator. That's going to be very, very tricky for the UFC, and they haven't done this before. If you look at other Bellator talent that's come over, one thing is, obviously Ben Askren had a stopover in ONE FC, so they didn't have to mention Bellator there. Hector Lombard came over, didn't get a title shot, didn't get a great fight to begin with. And then you had Eddie Alvarez, who fought Cowboy Cerrone in his first fight, lost, and had to kind of fight his way back. And also, Eddie fought in a lot of different promotions. Eddie fought in Japan. They could say, oh, this guy's fought all over the world, which is true. He wasn't a Bellator-branded guy. And so the idea that you're going to have a Bellator-branded guy, Chandler has spent virtually his entire career in Bellator, right? I mean, I called his first fight in Bellator. It was his fourth fight, okay? It's a guy named Scott Stapp, I think. So the thing is that
he fought the singer for Creed.
That's the guy's name from Creed.
I think so. I'll have to look that up.
The guy's name was Scott Stapp. I remember that. Yeah. Anyway, so the thing is that he's branded with this one promotion. You're bringing him over with a lot of hype and a lot of juice. You're saying he's a great fighter, but you can't really mention where he's from. I'm really curious how they're going to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, part of me thinks, is there really that much of a casual fan base that doesn't know who he is, right? But at the same time, as you said, we've always kind of been conditioned to, the UFC doesn't really let people go, that fighters just choose to leave. And this kind of seems like the inverse situation where, I don't know what happened between Bellator and Michael Chandler. We all assumed that he would be there, but his last fight, he kind of made some roots of, hey, I'm going to be leaving. This might be my last fight here. Thank you for everything you did for me, but didn't do so as a, hey, I'm going to take my gloves off and retire. So a lot of, I think, fans kind of took that as, would he really go to the UFC? And as you said, to me, it's just a case of how are they going to build this? And that's what makes this so complex, right? I think for Michael Chandler, obviously, it goes without saying, this is the best thing he could do, right? You walk into a promotion, hey, you're going to back up a championship fight. Okay, sign me up twice. But as you said, it's like you just have to question how they're going to build this because, to be fair, sometimes the UFC doesn't do the best job of marketing their fighters. And this isn't just marketing someone. This is almost bringing someone in with a backstory that you can't tell.
Yeah, it's really weird. I was amazed they did this. So why? And also, you can't be happy being, for example, a Paul Felder, who I think is right on number 7, Dan Hooker, who's number 5 or 6. This guy's going to leapfrog over all these people when there's an opportunity to back up for the title fight. And I can't imagine they're thrilled. And it's hard to then denigrate Bellator as a promotion or anything like that and then say by the way, not their champion. Everybody keeps forgetting this. Patricio Pitbull knocked him out. He's the champ at 155 in Bellator. So this guy who is a 3-time champion in Bellator but didn't leave with the belt leapfrogs over everybody but Bellator's crap, right? But Bellator is our kid brother, we don't have to take him seriously. Well, then how come a free agent from that promotion just vaulted over everybody else in the most talented division in UFC history? So it's a lot of strange decisions, in my opinion, promotionally, in choosing, not in signing Michael Chandler. To me, that's a no-brainer. But to put him in that position that quickly, the only thing I can think of is the UFC kind of flexing its muscle a little bit, saying, hey, look, we'll take somebody from outside and make them big. Oh, you want more money? We'll pull somebody from someplace else and put him in your spot. The message is clear if you're the Dustin Poiriers of the world, meaning a branded UFC guy who's really put in the time and really had great fights. They literally went out, got somebody else, and put him right in that spot. And now you look all over the internet and you look all over at all the MMA websites, and it's Michael Chandler, Michael Chandler, Michael Chandler. Make a fuss. Yeah. And we'll go out, right. And we'll go out there and we'll get somebody else and they'll be big. We make you big. It's us, not you. That's the message being sent.
Yeah. Not only that, and let's say, do you want to call it best or worst case scenario? Let's say somebody does fall out and you have obviously Chandler going in against an absolute monster. Let's say devil's advocate, he loses. Then you've just pushed your promotional value ahead because, hey, we took one of your top guys. We gave him an opportunity here. He gets beat. And then you see kind of the whole Ben Askren scenario play back out of, well, the Bellator guys just can't make it here. And then you've got somebody's legacy that, like you said, he wasn't coming in an undefeated fighter in terms of Michael Chandler by no stretch, but you have a guy who probably has some questions about whether he could compete at the highest level, which we all know the UFC is. There's some carryover, but at the same time, the highest level of fighter in their prime generally comes from the UFC. What would it do to his legacy if he comes in and catches a loss or two, for that matter?
Yeah, that's the question. The problem I have but the weakness of Michael Chandler, when you look at his Bellator career, it was always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? He looked fantastic, lost the rematch with Eddie Alvarez, then he drops 2 to Ill Will Brooks, the first one very, very close, and then gets the title back, loses it to Brent Primus off that leg kick that numbed his leg up and his ankle kept rolling, much like Sugar Sean O'Malley, gets it back, loses to Patricio Pitbull, fights Ben Henderson again, and leaves the promotion. It was always like he's not unbeatable in by any stretch of the imagination. He's also not – the problem I have with Chandler is he tends to make – I don't see bad decisions during fights, but he goes out like he's going to knock everybody out in the first round. Sometimes it works, But when it doesn't, he tends to have difficulty in long, difficult, grueling fights against tricky opponents. The 155-pound division in the UFC is full of those. So the flip side is he has the physical talent and the power and the athleticism to beat anyone in the lightweight division in the world, period. Anyone. So the UFC is also rolling the dice. If something falls out with this fight and he does get in there, this guy can be champion. He can be champion. If you saw that shot, which everybody did, that leveled Benson Henderson, who has an iron chin, the one that starched Patricky Pitbull, this dude can put you down. He really can. And so it's a high risk game for the UFC. It's not a high risk game for Michael Chandler, in my opinion. If he even has a decent showing against Khabib or Justin Gaethje, he's going to look better than a lot of guys in the UFC. I mean, everybody loves Dustin Poirier, myself included, and what happened? Khabib steamrolled him. So if it's even competitive for a while, if he even gives him trouble for a few rounds and then loses, his stock will go up. Certainly a chance that happens. So for him, it's I think low risk, high reward. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, if he was going to leave, could you pick better circumstances to leave under? I don't think you could.
No. And also it begs the question, we haven't heard a lot of it from the Bellator side. Nothing's really leaked out that I'm aware of. If Bellator can't keep Michael Chandler, man, a guy who I imagine they put a lot of effort into keeping.
You would think
champion wouldn't. Well, yeah, you'd think, right? He's so branded with Bellator. They have such a good working relationship, and he left pretty quickly. I mean, it wasn't like a long drawn out. There was no court fight over this. There was no long drawn out period like we did with Eddie Alvarez. That was a contentious one, but Chandler didn't. So can they keep the Douglas Limas and Patricio Pitbulls and the ones that Nemkov, the ones that have built the brand up, especially Pitbull and Douglas Lima? Once again, if you can't keep Chandler, can you keep those guys? That's a very serious question.
Right. And what message does it send for the generation that you're trying to build now? If the guy they have to look up to the most and say, hey, that's the guy, literally the guy that's carrying the flag up and down this place, isn't able to stay here for whatever reason. I mean, Michael Chandler can do whatever he wants, but I will also say, just to go back to the point you made, what if he does get in there, let's say with Khabib, and makes it a competitive loss? You take a look at how that worked out for Ali Quinta. Nobody expected him to come in and make it a competitive fight because, we've just seen this absolute monster. And then all of a sudden his stock has been pulled up for years. So I think you're absolutely right. If he can get in there and even give a decent showing, it literally can catapult him over some guys, which will probably make the case that probably didn't deserve to be looked over. It is also, I would think, one of the most, if not the most stacked division this could happen in.
Yeah, and he gets to go over it. He gets to leap over all those guys. Look, here's the deal that you have to understand when it comes to matchmaking. If you gave number 10 right now, which is what, Kevin Lee, still a murderer at 155, okay? If you gave him a shot at Khabib, you're rolling the dice. He could win that. Now, if I said you have to beat 3 guys and then Khabib, I don't think you can do that. That's a much taller order. Anybody in the top 15 in the UFC on a good night, because that division's so stacked, can be champion. They really can. Right. I mean, Paul Felder's number 7, 8? He's a tough dude. Really great fighter. So the interesting thing is you're asking something totally different, which is, can you beat a great fighter one time? Is a very different question than can you beat 3 great fighters over a year. That second one's a lot harder. Chandler doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
He's going right to the top. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, Drew Dober, Dariush, they've got an easy year of super tough competitive fights to get to this position, if not more. And all of a sudden, Michael Chandler's there. I think he might be further.
Beneil Dariush is a monster, and he's number 12.
Right? Right? Like, here's a whole year, or be Eddie out. Yeah, I mean, it's like crazy. Like, here's a whole year, or, just be Michael Chandler for the day. I bet Chandler, is really hoping, food poisoning, something not serious happens.
I'm telling you, I think he fights Ferguson. Which is another fast, then you're saying, one guy, and then you basically have a title shot if he beats Ferguson. But,
exactly.
2 fights. That's great. Now, I'm not saying he beats Ferguson. I'm just saying, at minimum, I think he fights Tony Ferguson, which puts him in line for number 2. That's a big lift. I'm amazed they gave that to a free agent. Amazed.
Well, I think personally, of all the fights, rankings aside from this, I think Tony Ferguson provides him the most winnable fight of the 3.
Yeah, stylistically, I think so. I really do. Now, just preliminary, man, obviously we'll do a breakdown if it ends up happening, but Ferguson's vulnerable to the power shot. He's not great defensively. He tends to take a lot of risks and take a lot of punches. He hasn't dealt with a concerted wrestler since Kevin Lee. And I think Michael Chandler is more explosive, accomplished more at the D1 level than Kevin Lee, and doesn't have the cutting issues that Kevin Lee has. I think part of the reason Kevin Lee has these up and down performances, he's very big for the weight class. He has trouble with the cut. Chandler's much better with that. So I think stylistically, I think Chandler lines up great with him. Is it a guaranteed win? Of course not. I mean, Ferguson's a great fighter. It's just, if I had to pick an opponent for him in the top, if I'm his management, I don't want him against a volume guy like Hooker or a guy who can really take a shot like Poirier. I would put him against a guy like Ferguson, who, of course, admittedly has a chin, but has been vulnerable to power shots defensively. And, I think the takedown's there when he needs it. So that's the one I'd pick if I was his management, Tony Ferguson.
Well, there you have it, folks. Feels good to hear Jimmy's voice again. You guys know we're going to continue to put out content just the way we were before. We appreciate you watching this video, and we will be back very shortly.